everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today is day 20 of Vlogmas. We're getting so close to Christmas and it is a glorious, beautiful day outside. The sun is shining, the sky is blue, almost clear, but it is quite cold. But I'm going to plant my tulips today, and these are the tulips that I plant in pots. So I have what I call tulip pots, which are some terracotta pots that I aged using the yogurt technique, and you can find that video on my channel if you're interested. A few years ago we did that, and then each year we plant them up with tulips during the autumn or winter in this case, since it's now December. And then I have a lovely tulip display on my patio in the spring, and then in the summer I plant it up with some annuals and a few perennials that I then take out and put into my borders for the following year. So the summer pots vary in style, but in the spring I always have tulips in these pots. Anyway, today I'm going to plant them up. It's a fairly straightforward process and I'm sure you've seen it before, but if you haven't, then do follow along and I'll show you how I do it. But if you are just interested in which varieties I'm planting up, then I will put a timer up here to let you know where to fast forward to if you're interested in seeing the varieties that I'm putting in the pots. So with the pots, we put the same number of pots on each side of the steps on the patio, and this year, instead of having a whole mishmash on each side, I've decided to do 2 pots of identical tulips. So each pot will have about 30 tulips in it, and there'll be one of each variety on each side, so that each side of the stairs looks quite symmetrical. And I thought I would go for that look this year rather than just trying to try out as many varieties as I could, which is what I normally like to do, but I've chosen my favourites this year. So let's get cracking. When I'm planting my bulbs, I use ordinary multi-purpose peat-free compost. Then quite often what I do is I scatter a very thin, sparse layer of grit and sort of mix it into the very top layer of compost before I add the bulbs. And the reason I do this is just to aid drainage. It's not strictly necessary, and a lot of people, most people don't do that, but I kind of always done it in the past. I don't have enough grit to do that. I've completely run out from doing my succulents and other things, other projects, and I've forgotten to replenish my supply. So there's no grit involved today. And the other thing that we can do is we can feed the tulip bulbs with a bulb food that's readily available. That's readily available in garden centres. Just an ordinary bulb food, and I have done that in the past too, but I'm not doing that today because I can't find it. We've been clearing out our sheds and it's buried somewhere. So that's something else that you can do if you want to. I'm briefly going to cover how to plant a tulip, just in case you're unsure. This is the top of the tulip. The pointy end is the top and the rounder end is the bottom. And it's best to plant a tulip so that it's at least 2 times its depth. By the time I press these into the compost, they'll be about 3 times their depth. And when I'm planting in pots, and if I'm not planting species tulips, I plant my tulips really close together so that they're almost touching. Some people call this like the egg box fashion. So you plant them as close as they would be if they were in an egg box. And the reason I'm able to do this is because I'm just planting them in the tulip pots, and then once they've done their season in the tulip pots and they've bloomed and then they've died back, I take them out and I plant them elsewhere in the garden, so they're not staying here permanently. If you are planting tulips in your beds permanently or somewhere to live forever, then plant them a lot more sparsely, because that will give them more nutrients from the soil, and it will also help them to divide and multiply, if that's what you would like. And in these tulip pots, I tend to be able to get about 30 in each one, somewhere, something like that. You can see that I've left it so late to plant these that they're almost sprouting. So now that I've planted my 30 tulips, I'm literally just going to fill it up with compost. And then what I always do is sprinkle quite a thick layer of grit, not an inch or anything, but a couple of centimetres of grit on top of the compost so that you can't see any more soil. And I do this for 2 reasons. I do it because it will prevent weeds growing whilst we're waiting for the tulips to come up, and that's really important. There are a lot of weed seeds around and birds drop them and things like that, so it's just much harder for a seed to germinate if it's landed on the grit rather than if it lands on the compost. So I always put a layer of grit on top, and it kind of helps the pot to look a little bit better. However, this is all the grit that I have left, so just imagine that you can't see any soil. And then I take a piece of chicken wire like this. This one, I just reuse them every single year. So this one's already cut to size, but I just cut it to size and then I peg it down with landscape pegs. And this, I have found that this stops the squirrels. So you can put 3 or 4 in, it just depends. The only thing I would say is when the tulips start to come up, I find that I have to lift this off. So I just take it out as the tulips start to pop up when they're maybe about 1 inch or 2 inches tall, because otherwise what happens is as the tulip foliage grows, this starts to become like a flying saucer and it gets trapped in all the foliage, and the foliage starts lifting it up and it looks a bit weird. So I just take the whole thing out. And that's all there is to it. I am not going to water these in because my compost is damp and it's going to rain. So they don't really need watering in. If you're living in a very dry climate, I would definitely advise watering them in once and then not doing anything until your tulips have started shooting. I will put some grit on here when I get some. With this one, we're just going to have to imagine that there's some grit there. If you do decide to go down the route of putting chicken wire on, try to make sure you don't pierce your tulips, and just make sure you put the staples around the edges. I'd just like to talk about the tulip varieties that I've chosen to plant in my pots this year. So the first one is called Apricot Beauty. It'll grow to about 45 centimetres tall, and it's this combination of salmon rose. It's got these tinges of red, like just sort of a brush stroke of red on the petals, and it's such a gorgeous combination. Then we've got Apricot Favourite. This one's quite short, so it's only 40 centimetres tall, but it's this incredibly striking blend of soft apricot with beautiful salmon pink blushy edges. Then we have Lady Van Eyck. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I always have problems with these pronunciations. So this one is taller and it'll grow to 50 centimetres, but it's this incredibly gorgeous colour. It's a deep rosy red with a little hint of lilac-y purple. It's quite large flowered. It's one of the Darwin hybrids, so it's going to have really strong stems, and I think it's going to really pick up the pinks in the more apricot-y shaded tulips that I've got. Then we're moving on to something that's a bit more speciality. It's a fringed tulip called Louvre. This one will grow to about 55 centimetres tall, and obviously it's named after the museum in Paris. And this one is this unique pinky purpley colour with a paler interior. You can see there's a theme here of sort of apricots and pinks going on with a little bit of rose thrown in. Next we have Mariette, this incredibly graceful tulip. It's this gorgeous deep satiny rose colour which fades to pale pink towards the edges of the petals. It's a lovely slender tulip with this fluted shape that curves out at the top. I think it's incredibly elegant. Next we have Salmon Impression. This is incredibly beautiful. It's a huge goblet shaped tulip on tall, strong stems up to 55 centimetres. And it's this gorgeous pale pink, gently flushed with pale apricot, and the inner petals are a slightly deeper salmony apricot with a little bit of blue at the base. Then we have Tropical Impression. This one grows to 50 centimetres, and you can see that it's this gorgeous shade of pastel-y apricot with pinks, and it just looks incredibly tropical. Then we have Amazing Parrot, one of my favourite parrot tulips. I have to have this one every year. It only grows to 40 centimetres, and parrot tulips are one of the last to flower, and so you do have to wait for them, but they're so worth it. It's this incredible cherry pink flushed with golden orange. It's evocative of the plumage from a parrot, and it just looks so exotic, and I just love the movement that you get from these feathered petals that twist and turn. It's incredibly flamboyant and I love it. Then we have Pink Vision, another parrot tulip. So again, it's going to be late to flower and it's on 50 centimetre stems. But this is a new variety and I'm so excited to have it. And it's got these large flared heads with intricately feathered edges. And the petals again will twist and turn artistically. And they're going to be in shades of pale pink, edged with rose, with these ivory and green flames, and then just darker magenta edges. Well, that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've tried any of these varieties of tulips and what you think of them, and if you've got some favourites. I would be really interested. I'm always searching for new reliable varieties. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all tomorrow.